Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is your host, Bob Gibbons.
And I'm your other host, Stephen Nooner, and I'm excited to invite. Gosh, what the?
We've already
great
invited
start
him.
here. Hey, yeah, welcome. Mike Rentz is here with us. He is the owner of the Perfect Light Cup. They're based in Capel, Texas. They have 32 employees. And we're really excited to learn about what they do. They make amazing lights for home and Christmas lighting. So we're going to learn a lot more about that. If you want to learn more, go visit theperfectlight, LIGHT.com.
Did you sleep last night?
Probably not. Welcome.
Welcome, Mike. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
So we always like to start off with the wisdom of others, and we usually do that with a quote. But instead of a quote, we have something called the common denominator story, and we have no idea what this is, so we're kind of going out on a limb. But what's the common denominator story?
Yeah, so when I came out of school, this was the first business that I got into, and so I was ready to take on the world and thought I knew everything, and so I had this meeting with my boss who became my mentor in business, and I was just telling him about how, man, the problem with your business, the reason it's not growing is because of your people. I mean, these people, and I said, I just laid out every employee and every person I had a problem with. And he said, I found in relationships that if there's a problem between, some people, it's just kind of two ways. There's only two parties involved in that deal. And so with regards to all the employees you just mentioned, who's the common denominator there? And there was times when he was mentoring me that he was intentionally not so tactful to make a point. And so that was my journey of learning about humility and in people. And so anyway, so it's just a funny.
When I got in the real estate business, I was 20 years old and I looked like a child. And I went on this meeting a couple years later, but I still look like a child. And apparently when I left the meeting, but before I got back to the office, the guy that I had met with called my boss and said, "What are you doing sending this smart kid to this meeting with me?" And I was like, "Well, Paul, I thought it was a good meeting. What's the deal?" He goes, "Well, you can kind of be a smart A every now and then." And so then I went home that night and I told my wife, I said, "You're not going to believe what happened. I feel terrible." And she said, "Well, you can be I was like, "You're kidding me." I just kept getting the wrong kind of reinforcement. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, sometimes it's good for people to just give you some real feedback.
And some things never change, right?
Well played.
I should have expected that one.
So since I did such a great job of explaining and describing your business, I would love you to tell us specifically what you guys do, but back in, because you said already that you were working there in college. Tell us how you got involved with the business.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to school and started doing Christmas lights while I was supposed to be in class.
Okay.
For a guy that started a business in Austin. And he had a relationship through an initial partnership with another guy in Houston. Uh-huh. So long story short, the guy in Houston had found out that I was working for this guy and called me and asked me if he could talk to me. And so I went and talked to him, and I remember we sat down on his back porch, and he was just like, this is what we do. And I kind of laughed, thinking, when you go to college, you get this impression that everything is beneath you pretty much. And so it was like, you can't make a career out of Christmas lights. And then he talked to me about it, and, the Holy Spirit just kind of pulled on my heart, and I knew I was supposed to be there. And it was great because he ended up being spiritual father to me and mentor. And I mean, that was his promise to me initially was don't know if you're going to get rich and famous here, but I'll teach you more about life and business than anybody else. So that was the start of our relationship. And he fulfilled his end of the bargain, and we grew together. We became partners. Then I opened up the Dallas location as a partner, and then he retired. And so I bought his portion of the business out. And so now my wife and I own the business, and he's playing a lot of golf.
So
Good
tell
for
us
him.
how, whenever you were having that conversation with him at the point where you'd been an employee for quite a while and you now were going to become a partner, were you going to become a partner because you were going to be running the Dallas office and that required a partner level person?
Yeah, no, it was kind of, so we had the common denominator story well before that, but there was still some time of growth and change. So I kind of demanded, I'd become the sales manager. I was driving a lot of sales. We're increasing the business very heavily. And it was like, listen, I understand this business now. I don't want to press you, but we need to figure out where is the place for me to grow in here. And so I asked him for equity. He wasn't interested in giving any up. And so he just told me, he said, look, if you want to be a partner in this business, you find a way outside of the business that I have here to generate more profits. And so I went away and came up with some ideas and came back, and he didn't like them. I threw those away and came back with some other ones. And we got to franchising is basically where it got to. And so my wife had an interior design business. She was very successful out of college. We sold her portion out of that and put everything we had into the company, became partners. And we went into franchising. That was an epic fail for us in our industry, in our business. And just we weren't really familiar with how to do that. And then later decided to open up company-owned locations, and that's how we got to Dallas.
So to go back to the partnership thing then, initially you were asking for equity as a result of your production, but it all actually ended up requiring you to make a cash investment to get that equity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so cash and then pretty much my sweat as well. He was not interested in doing any of the work on that. He was going to run his location so I could put up money and a smaller portion of cash, more of my work and effort, build another kind of arm, or in this case, branch of the business, and that's kind of the way it worked out.
So, just out of curiosity, the franchising, why didn't it work? What did you learn from
And
that?
where did you franchise first?
Yeah, so I kind of got into franchising by doing licensing a little bit. So I would teach people the business, license some of that support, and sell them materials. And then realized that, that actually worked to sell materials, but I was really interested in, opening up great businesses that did work the right way, that carried our brand, that honored Christ, that were just, a part of us, not just Joe's Lighting, who I sell a few lights to. And so we thought franchising would be the way to do that. So the first franchise was sold in San Antonio, followed by L.A., San Diego, and then was about to convert a guy in Kansas City that was a licensee. And then that's right before the housing situation happened. And we're that's the biggest predictor of our business is the housing market. And so when the housing market went down, I had one of my franchisees in San Diego had to walk out on his house basically because of the loss of value in that during that time. The LA guy had to fire him because he wasn't operating ethically. San Antonio guy's still going. The contract's up. And he's so engaged in the brand at this point, he just wants to come back and work for us. So he's going to come back and just become an employee. We're going to roll that up and make it a company-owned location. And so franchising for me just...
So it wasn't a total failure. It sounds like you learned some things from it, and you got maybe another great person coming on from San Antonio.
Yeah.
What would you do differently if you had to do the franchising thing over again?
I wouldn't do it for this particular business. I believe, this is just personal opinion, I wouldn't franchise a concept where I wasn't driving the leads and in control of the finances and the data. So, for example, if you have a brand that drives the revenue, then it's easy to sell that you have value and therefore they should pay you the royalty. If you send them out to go drive and build their own business, they're going to forget about all that you taught them about that business up front. Secondly, I would want to control the data, meaning I would want to have access to all the computer systems that run all the transactions. So I knew, because if you have somebody 300 miles away and ask them to send you financials so you can know you're getting paid correctly, sure. everyone on your end is a little speculative about whether those financials are accurate. And so then it just causes a little, I don't know, kind of resentment or difficulty in the relationship.
Yeah, sure. Mistrust.
What about core values? So, I mean, I know core values are really important to you. I mean, you're a Christ-centered company. Was that at the time, was it already so much a part of your DNA that was a screening process for these franchisees?
Yeah, no, not at that time.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the biggest things we learned as we were growing, is that when you're running a small business, you have these core values and these thoughts and these feelings and this character just ingrained in you. And so intuitively, you respond to outside circumstances, customer problems, everything with your character.
Right.
When you start adding people, they bring in their own element. Now, a lot of people will buy into yours because it's close and similar, and they like the brand and want to support what you're supporting. But if you don't document that well and you don't drive that home, you don't train that, you don't hire based on that, then you'll kind of lose direction from time to time. And so when we had the franchises, that was part of the issue. We were not screening on that. It was just, well, everyone will want to do business the right way, right? Just being naive.
Seems
yeah.
natural, right?
Yeah. So how could you go to sleep and cheat people? Well, people do it all the time. So that was one of the other mistakes. Didn't pick those franchises well. It was more about making the initial sale and hoping that we could convert them to do things the right way over time, and that just wasn't a good fit.
What are just a few things that you do now? I mean, you said driving the core values home. What are just a few of the things you do now to make sure that you're driving them home and that they are part of your culture of your company?
Yeah, so I mean, we really had to go away as leaders and then get around a plan that we really believed in, and that was actually hard. You think it's in your head, it's like, oh, this will just take us a second.
Sure.
It took us probably, I don't know, we probably got about 50 hours into it of just talking about it, making sure it's right, getting it down. So that was, getting it on paper was the first thing. Then we started communicating it to our employees, which has to be in a number of ways. I mean, our current employees were, this is what it is. We need you to memorize it. We're going to say it in every meeting. We're talking about it in every visionary and strategy plan we have. We're putting it up on the walls. We made brands around certain things.
Sure.
To just kind of drive it home. And then with regards to hiring new people, as you brought up, we'll just go through that with them and say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're about. But then all the way down to the management day to day, hey, you did a good job.
Do you interview for the core values now?
We do, yeah, absolutely.
So you have questions around them, try to uncover whether or not they have them, because
yes,
I mean, people are sometimes pretty good at manipulating that, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of tools that you're using, Culture Index or any other kind of assessment tools that you're using to help you hire those people?
Yeah, so we've kind of, I've really outsourced that to a friend and partner of mine who's been in the business of recruiting people and doing coaching around employees for a long time, 30 plus years. And so we've put together a plan of how we profile those candidates, how we're going to advertise for those candidates, and really show what the company looks like before they even choose us, so it's really clear who we are, what we're about, and they get a feel of if they're going to fit in or not. Then we do some assessments, DISC and other ones, emotional intelligence.
Well, cool. Well, in business, there's so many times when we are always trying to pump ourselves up and look good to the clients and all that, but is there a place for humility in business? We'll talk about that when we come back from the break.
Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate one, maybe two leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at texastenantrep.com. Again, that's texastenantrep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Rich Sweeney with RH Sweeney Associates. Our focus is helping leaders hire the right person and then manage them to improve profitability and growth within the organization. And I need to get out of this studio because it's a bit disconcerting with Steve and especially Bob. Luckily, it's not a clinical tool, but I do have my concerns.
Welcome back, everyone, to the next level. We're here with our special guest, Mike Rentz, owner of The Perfect Light. If you want to learn more about Mike, please, or The Perfect Light, please visit theperfectlight.com.
Well, Mike, we were talking in the break about the business a little bit more, and it goes way beyond Christmas lights alone, which is pretty much all we talked about in the first half. So give us a little bit more full picture of the organization.
Okay, yeah. So we provide basically two services. Permanent lighting or landscape lighting or outdoor lighting for your home, pool area. You know, that's usually like uplighting to light the architecture, trees, landscaping, stuff like that. And we'll do that year round. And then during Christmas season, we also install Christmas lights. All of that we custom design. We provide all the materials. We install it all. We service it and maintain it.
So how do you, I mean, those are very different services in a way. I mean, one's sort of an accent seasonal and one's there permanently. Is it a dramatic difference in the way you sell it and the way customers receive it? And do you find that you have totally different customers for the two, or is it the same customer for both?
Yeah, so not as many people carry over as you would think. You know, most people say, oh, I bet everyone that buys landscape lights buys Christmas lights, vice versa. That's not necessarily the case. There are different sales in that the Christmas is much more emotional, and it's generally bought for other people. So usually people buy Christmas lights, it's bought because they want to energize the neighborhood, or it's a family-related thing. They have people coming into town, or they have young kids. So it's a very emotional sale. It's really hard to practically explain why you would spend that much money for Christmas lights, right, other than it just feels good, and I can do it, and I want to do it for other people. Landscape lights is much more practical. It provides value to the home long-term, security. It's there every night. You built this expensive pool, then you can't even see it through your windows at night, and the whole back of the house is windows. So it's just really a practical sale. And so the two customers don't always overlap.
Interesting.
They come from different sources. I mean, imagine you get your our pool contractors in a good...
So we initially, when I started the business, that was back, started doing the sales was back when door knocking was appropriate.
Gotcha.
You were the lighting guy in the neighborhood, and so we went residential door to door, and then over time we've had to become more reliant on referrals and other relationships because we don't knock on doors anymore. As soon as you started to get arrested for that, we kind of backed off of that one.
Still doesn't stop them.
But yeah, same customer, like same communities that we're selling both products in. Generally affluent communities, sure, in suburb areas in and around the metro.
So what's the average sale for somebody putting in lights for Christmas?
The first year sale is a $3,600 average sale. Our minimum is $1,500 the first year, and we have customers that have spent over $100,000 on Christmas lights.
Now, why do you make a distinction between first year or anything else?
I'm sorry. So the first year we will be designing it, setting up all the electrical for it, timers, breakers, outlets, everything that they'll need. We'll custom cut and fit all the materials to the home, and then those materials are theirs to keep because they fit that. So the next year and subsequent years, it's half of the first year price, and as long as you renew at that half price, the materials are guaranteed for forever. So as they go out, we'll just replace them at that half.
Wow. That's pretty nice. I wasn't expecting that to be quite as reasonable as you're telling me it is.
We'll also store them too. So
I hope my wife's not listening.
So talk about the transition. So, I mean, you're running in a business now with quite a bit of scale to it. You were in sales. I mean, do you still go on sales calls? Are you out finally? Or, I mean,
very rarely. Only if it's an old customer that I have a relationship with. I have very good relationships with some old customers. They'll still move or call me, and I'll go there.
okay.
But most new sales will go to my sales force.
And how big is that force?
Yeah, so it will vary seasonally, but it's about 10 people, and all year round, may go up to 15, 20 during the Christmas season.
So we're talking scale. I know one of the projects that you guys have been working on is kind of a software project. I think you're kind of alluding to that. So what are you guys doing specifically, and kind of how's it going to make an impact for your business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so originally when we started, the biggest kind of differentiator between us and our competitor was it was usually the guy in the truck, or we were the only professional provider. And so being in business for a long time, doing quality work, putting in quality materials was enough to make a sale, and people could just understand that. Well, then, as there's no barriers to entry, a lot of people get into the business, and people will say whatever to appear to have the exact same value and experience. And so we found that just wasn't enough. We needed to be able to operate more efficiently, so we could make sure our prices were competitive. And then we needed to also do some new and creative things. And so as I just looked at the service industry in general, not just lighting, I saw this gap between the customer communication and the company. The old school way of calling, leaving a voicemail, waiting to call back, there could be 3 days that would go by where we'd make multiple calls to a customer and they would think we didn't call them because they didn't check their voicemail or whatever.
Right.
And so the thing is I believe software is going to change the service industry enormously. I think the customer is going to have a lot more control over what they do in the way of design, getting information quickly. I can see people doing landscape design in front of their fireplace on their iPad in the winter, ready for spring by the time it comes, and just be able to do it themselves. Same thing with lighting. So we're trying to produce that type of product, but we're also building it into operational management software. So a database with a web app running on top of it that can control the functions of the business and automate a lot of those functions, so that we're not so reliant on the people doing steps 1 through 137 correctly every time to make a customer happy. The computer will do a lot of that for us.
So you're doing custom. Have you hired developers? Are you working with an outside partner, or?
Yeah, so I'm partnering with a buddy and a relationship of mine through a group called C12, which is just kind of a business leadership group, and he has been in the business of building software for a long time and sold companies, been successful, and he has the same kind of heart. No one really knows how to figure it out, but his same heart is there's this place in these kind of larger small businesses, 50 to 100 employees, stuff like that, where especially when they have a lot of mobile employees, where software is going to make a huge difference, and not the big players that are really good at it don't want to play in that market because it's risky. It seems difficult. And how do you duplicate that? And you can't customize software for everybody; they can't afford it. And so we're kind of playing around with it together, and we don't really know what we figured out yet. But I do know that software, in some way, is going to change the service industry in a short period of time.
All industries.
So you seem like you're very focused on how to create efficiencies within a company. How is that, other than the software, have you found there to be other ways to create that efficiency, and what's the ultimate benefit of that?
Yeah, the best thing for us in the way of efficiency is anywhere where the state of Texas will allow us to do production-based pay, super valuable. So, commission salespeople, subcontractors on a production basis, where it's a share of that job, it changes everything. I mean, when we put our contractors on production-based pay, it took us 4 years to do it. Their volume went up by more than double, and their service calls went down by half. And so production-based pay is the way to go, because the bad people fall off, and you don't really have to speculate whether they're bad people. You can see it in the numbers, and the good people love you and never want to leave, and they do a really good job, and everyone's happy. You're limited to where you can do that, and not every job can be tied to certain metrics, real easily. If you're answering the phone, it's kind of tough. But so production-based pay, good quality people, and then systems and process, which your systems and process are more likely to operate correctly and efficiently if you can tie them into a computer, because the computer doesn't mess up.
You know, it's funny you say that, because Dave Ramsey used to always say, I'd put the receptionist on production if I could figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's on my list. I'm going to figure it out.
I mean, in commercial real estate, which is where I am, you know, everybody's performance based. I mean, there's hardly anybody that's not. And I love that. I would want to do that for everybody I can possibly do that with, because otherwise, how do you hold them accountable? It's much, much harder.
I'm still looking for a way to get my radio co-host on production, or maybe vice versa. I've been blowing it today.
Just to read stuff. Absolutely. All right. So we talked about in the hook before the break. We talked about humility. I alluded to humility, and you know, in business, we're always trying to pump ourselves up and, you know, convince our clients as to why they should use us. So, humility. Is there a place for humility? What is your thought on that?
Just in business in general, or
yeah.
I mean, I think that for us, I mean, for everybody, everyone's providing some sort of service, and so I call us a service business because we're specifically doing something at a resident's house, but everyone does some sort of service, and I think humility is the base for your heart being in the right position to actually serve another person. And you almost, I mean, not almost, every time, if you lay down for that service, you may not get the benefit on every transaction or every conversation, every situation. But over time, having a heart of humility and you know, this deliberate act of service towards another person will pay off in the long term for your business. People can sense that, they know that, and that's what they're wanting and they're expecting. They don't owe you anything. They're a customer, they're paying, and so you owe them everything. And if you approach it that way, your reputation will stand for itself, and you'll continue to grow.
People can sniff it out, right?
That's right.
It's like
Yeah.
people love. I mean, it's like innate. I think a lot of people, you can just tell it. Everybody, I've seen the quote. Everybody loves to buy. No one likes being sold. And I think a lot of that is in the humility, the approach. Are you actually helping me solve a problem that I want to solve, or are you pushing what's in your best interest on me?
But I think there's also a place where some people can be annoyingly humble, and what I mean by that is that at some point you've got to tell people what your capabilities are, not just to pump yourself up to make yourself look good, but for their benefit. If I know I have something that you need and it's going to make your life better, it would be wrong of me to withhold that, even though you might get the wrong impression as to why I'm doing that or how I'm doing that. But I think that's really important.
I think that makes perfect sense. You know, what I tell my guys when I'm training them is humility necessarily is not you not talking about the accomplishments that the business has had. You know, if these are factual things that we've done, you know, we've served over 10,000 people. These are important 15 years in business. That's okay. You can still be humble and say that. But when it comes to actually serving them, are you there to get them what they want? Or are you trying to sell them what you want, as you brought up?
Well, thanks so much for being our guest today, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
For our listeners, please go to theperfectlight.com to learn more about his company and to place your order for Christmas.
Have a great week.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.